Okay, so here we have a 2013 Yukon Denali, and as you know, you can connect your phone via Bluetooth for phone conversations, but not for audio. So I'm going to show you how to use the factory stereo setup and use it for Bluetooth audio as well. So here's what I'm going to use to do the job. What we've got here is just some typical soldering equipment, the gun, the flux, and the solder. And I've got a Bluetooth audio adapter by JL Audio. It's model MBT-RX that I chose. It's rated for actually marine use, but it'll work fine in car audio. And I've got my X-Acto knife, a mechanic's glove so I don't cut my finger while I'm stripping the wires, and wire cutter. And then what I did is I took a Y cable, an old RCA Y cable I had laying around, and cut it up and strip the wires. And we'll be using that to wire it into the actual harness on the Yukon, and then we'll go from these Y harness over to the Bluetooth audio adapter. So it's kind of how it's going to go. So this Bluetooth audio adapter just needs power, positive and negative, and then signal, which will come from these two guys right here. So the next step in this process is to start in the back seat. This is where we're going to tie in for the audio, and after we're all done, all you do is you just on the dashboard unit, you're just going to select AV like you're listening to audio over the overhead television. So the vehicle must have these three inputs right here for the audio video inputs. We're just going to wire into these, and we'll wire the Bluetooth adapter into these, and it'll be hidden behind this panel. So what I've done is I've used just this little plastic pry tool I have. You can use just about anything, but plastic's good so it doesn't do any damage to this area here on the vehicle. And I actually used the lighter plug to get things started. I just kind of pulled up on it at the same time while putting it in there. And so that's already all been done. So we'll just go ahead, and these are just little tabs, and it's just held in place. So you can see what the back of this looks like. I've pulled it out. These are the little tabs that hold it in, and they just pop right out. So you really got to give it a good tug, but it will come out. It might be easier to open the center console when you do it, so you can get around the top of it as well. There's four wire harness. This guy right here is for the lighter plug, and the other three are for the controls for the audio, the TV, and the climate control in the back seat. There's one of the wiring harness, one of the plugs that actually has a little blue tab on it that must be removed before it will come out. So after everything's removed, the wire harness that we're going to be working with will be this one right here. So everything else can be put to the side for now. So this wire harness, what we'll have to do is, it's got some covering on it. So this is where we're going to use the X-Acto knife and the cut glove just to kind of peel back, just make a light cut on the outside of that, and expose the wires on the inside so we can get to them. And we're going to have to strip some covering off those wires so we can solder the RCA Y connectors to that. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and show you the end result here in a second. So here's what the wiring harness looks like once everything's exposed and the insulation has been peeled back. There was also some electrical tape on this portion after I got the outside covering off. So the top two wires that you see, the purple and the ground right here, are for the video. which would be the yellow connector. And the bottom 3 that you see, the yellow, the white, and the other exposed ground wire, is for the left and the right audio. So these 3 are the ones we're going to have to tie into for those RCAs. So you can see when I cut the insulation off, I did nick this purple wire just a little bit. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to isolate the video because we're not going to be tying into that. So I'm going to first put a piece of electrical tape over that nick on that wire, and then I'm going to tape these 2 together just to kind of isolate them so we can protect those and get them out of the way. So here's the finished product. As you can see, these 2 wires over here for the video are fully insulated with tape, and we've got the 3 we're going to tie into: the yellow, the white, and the ground for the audio. And what I did is I just took some with the X-Acto knife, I took some of the insulation off of those wires. Just when you do that, just be careful not to cut the actual copper on the inside of the wires. But you can see we've got a spot to solder our RCA Y cables into now. So that'll be the next step. Okay, so at this point we're ready to solder. I've got all those wires pulled back. The white wire is going to be right positive. The yellow wire is going to be left positive on the RCAs. And obviously the exposed wire is the ground or the shield. And what the other thing I did is I stripped, this is the plug for the lighter socket back here for the power outlet, and I also uncovered the wire for the ground. We're going to use this ground right here for the Bluetooth unit, and there's no switched power anywhere back here, so we don't want to put the Bluetooth unit on constant power or it will be a parasitic drain. So we'll have to run a positive wire up front and tie into a switch source. Okay, so here's how it looks when they're all twisted together. Here's the RCA cables, and I've just got them twisted around the exposed wire. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some solder flux and just make sure that all these connections are nice and covered in flux so we get a good solder joint. Okay, now we are ready to solder. Okay, there we go. Everything is all soldered. So we have all these connections soldered for the audio, and then I've got the ground soldered right there. So you can see all the connections are made. The other solder connection I made was right here, and that was just for the power on the Bluetooth unit, for the cable that's got to go up to the switched power up front. So we'll get to that here in a little bit, but I'm going to go ahead and mount this now since we're done here. Also, each of these wires is going to have to be taped individually, and then we'll tape them all together and protect that ground again so it's not exposed. So we just don't want any shorts happening here, so make sure we re-insulate these before we tape all 3 together. And I'm going to go ahead and mount the Bluetooth adapter right down here. So there's a flat surface. I've already cleaned it with rubbing alcohol, so that's where it'll end up going, just laying flat down there. It comes with double-sided tape already on it. So here's everything now that it's all taped. You can see everything's clean. Again, I taped the individual wires before I tape the whole bundle together, so there's no shorts that happen. Same thing for the negative ground that we tied into here. Isolate the ground and then wrap around both, just so there's no possibility of shorts. Okay, here's the finished product. We've got this all taped together. The Bluetooth receiver is mounted down here with the double-sided tape, and we've got our ground made right here. So all of our wiring harnesses are nice and clean up, And now what we need to do is make the final RCA to RCA connection, and I'll put a little electrical tape around each one of those so it holds them together, so any vibration from the road won't knock them apart. And we'll go ahead and bundle those cables and cable tie them and get them all secured, stuff them down in there so we don't get a bunch of rattling in the center console while we're driving. So get everything secured. The other thing I did was run the power cable. You can see it kind of feeds down there, and it's going to come out right down here underneath. So then we'll take that up front and tie it into some switched power. So I left myself probably about 6 or 7 feet of cord, maybe even a little more. Just don't sell yourself short on the cord. And yeah, we're ready to bundle that up and put everything back together. So here's final wire bundle tucked down there, and this is the final product before we put everything back together. Okay, everything's plugged back in, and don't forget your the little blue connector that we had to remove on the green plug. That's got to go back in just to make sure that gets held in place. So everything is ready to go, and this can get snapped back in place. There we go. All set. Now we've got to do the power for the Bluetooth unit, and we'll test everything out. Okay, now we're up under the dashboard here so we can find our power source. And there is a little distribution block under the dash right here, and all I've done is pull the cover off. You kind of pinch the top. It's got the unlock symbol on it, and then you got to kind of just give the bottom a good tug. It's got this guy right here that just holds on to this right here. So you got to give it a good tug to come out of there. Where we're going to tie in for our positive power for our Bluetooth that will be switched is on this orange connector, which is on the left side. It was plugged in here. I already unplugged it. So all you do is you just kind of give this tab a push on the side, and it'll come right out of there. Came out real easy for me, and we're going to tie in to the pink wire. This one right here. So just like we did in the back, we're going to carefully strip some of the insulation off so we can solder into it. So just like we did in the back, we've got that soldered to the pink wire, our power lead for the Bluetooth adapter, and we'll have to tape that up and plug it back in. And what I did here is I just ran the wire up, kind of tucked it behind there. I ran it up through there. You can hide the wire however you'd like, and then you can just kind of tuck the wire up underneath here just to hide it. So that's all. Let's get that taped up, plug it back in, and test things out. So the final step is to finish hiding the wire, and there are 2 screws that I took out. So if you move the seat all the way forward, there's a screw there, and you can tuck the wire up underneath there. And when you come up front here, there is the other screw that's right there. If you use long Phillips head screwdrivers, you can get to these when the seat is in the far back and the far forward position. One mistake I made during this job is this opening here. When you go to put that cover back on, I didn't leave myself enough wire for that wire to go back behind that cover. So what I had to do is I had to cut that wire, make a splice so it could go through the front of the cover there. But if you leave yourself a little extra wire when you do this job, you won't have to do that, and you can just come back from behind the cover. So just a tip, a mistake I made during the job. Hopefully you can learn from that. Okay, so now here we are in the car, and what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and test things out. So I've got this phone here, and there we go, I'm in my Bluetooth, and there is the new device that we just hooked up. So there we go, it paired, and it says connected for media audio. So now we'll go to Pandora. And now on the head unit itself, you're just going to click this to go to audio video, and you should be good now. There we go. Everything works.